Hello, I'm Dwight Marlow, and thank you for joining us today. We pray that this program will be a blessing to you. So now, please enjoy today's witness.
Reed Temple in Maryland, his words just began to touch me, and I thought, I can do that. You know, he would never know how much those sermons impacted me. And I was not one to go shake the pastor's hand or be seen. Right. Even when I met my husband, he's like, why don't you ever go say hi to the pastor? I don't need to. His words impacted and changed my life. And I began to shift, and I began to get involved in youth ministry, and as I was led by the Spirit. And then I got involved in healing and deliverance. And that is my passion now.
Boy. That's, yeah. Good.
Healing and deliverance.
We need more of that.
Yeah, I've noticed a lack. I noticed a lack.
Yeah.
A lack there of true healing and deliverance. And not in a scary way, because the church has done a great job of making deliverance seem scary.
Yeah.
And so has social media.
Yeah.
You know, we think of a demon as, you know, and all this big scary thing with a pitchfork and two horns, and that's not what it is. Ungodly spirit is just anything that is sin. That is sin in our lives, especially sin that happens, habitual sin, things that we can't seem to shake, you know. Those just ungodly spirits. And the Lord really began to show me that I needed deeper healing. So I began to be involved in healing and deliverance ministry. And I just want to see everybody healed.
Right.
I want to see the body of Christ healed.
Yeah.
I want to see leaders healed. I want to see everyone in the church. I just want to see people healed, because God has healed me. Because I know how I used to be, and I know what I used to do and say, and how I used to behave, and God has healed me. And even when I met my husband, I thought I was healed. Mm-hmm. You know, because I had taken my single time a few years before I met him to really heal, to go through deliverance and become what I wanted to attract. Mm-hmm. And so God said that to me. He said, Chaka, you want a husband, but you're not one of those things that you've been praying for. And I thought, you're talking to me, God? What do you mean? I'm perfect. Don't you know this? And he said, you're not faithful. Because, you know, women, we have this list that we make up. We have lists to make up. We have a list of, you know, what we want in a man, and, you know, faithfulness was among us. I want a faithful man. He says, you're not faithful. I want a godly man. He says, you're not a godly woman. You don't even go to church on a regular basis. I want someone who's committed. God said, are you committed to me? How are you asking me things, Chaka, that you're not? And I was just like, ooh. And so I began to just go after and become all the things on my list. God said, become what you want.
Oh boy, that is beautiful. Yeah. That's strong. That is beautiful.
Become what you want, because if I send you someone who's all those things on your list, all you're going to do is abuse it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. That's so true.
Because you're not that. Yeah. And anything unaddressed will manifest, and the true person will eventually manifest, and you're going to abuse what I send you if you're not healed.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't want to abuse anyone any longer, because I had been abused man after man prior to meeting him. As a matter of fact, I had never been faithful to anyone before I met him. I had a man A, B, C, and D. I made up a man, because if you didn't do this, then I would go to the next person, and that person, I made up a person. Uh-huh. You know, and as God began to heal me when I met my husband, I prayed and fasted. I set my feet in the house of the Lord, because he just shared so many nuggets. I'm like, God, you're an awesome God. He just gave me so many things, and I'm like, wow, that can only come from you, because it sounds so great. You know, I know I'm smart and I'm intelligent, I'm educated, but no, that didn't come from me. Yeah. And he told me, you know, where your feet are, your heart is.
Boy, it's true. So true.
So if you have your feet planted in the house of the Lord, that's where your heart is. He said, and as you begin to look for a spouse, look at where his feet are planted. And so when I first met my husband, he would say, you know, what do you look for, man? I said, I'm not telling you, because I don't want you to become what I tell you, but know that I'm watching you. And God would tell me, watch where his feet are. You know, so is he a man of prayer? You know, does he have his feet in the house of God? You know, or is he at the gym or at the club? Or all of these other places. Where his feet are, his heart is. Boy. And if I created him, and he's supposed to love you as I love the church, and he's not even in church, how can he love you?
Boy. That was from the Spirit. That was from the Spirit. That's so insightful.
Man, I was just like, wow. And he said, he has to be planted in the house of the Lord. I'm the only one that can teach him how to love you properly. So if he has no relationship with me, where do you really think that relationship is going to go? Nowhere.
Right.
And so he said, what you looking for? Don't worry about what I'm looking for. Know that I'm watching you. Mm-hmm. And I would just watch him, and he would pray after every, phone conversation. We had a long distance courtship. We would pray after our phone conversations. He was a praying man. To this day, he's a praying man. Even when I don't want him to pray because he's praying about me. And I'm sitting there like, he's like, let's pray. He's a lot. Yeah. Praying about me. One thing that he was a praying man. He was a godly man, no matter what. Even when I would change and my behavior was fickle, that man, he will pray until something changes, until shift happens.
Well, a wonderful man.
Yes, awesome man. So as we got married, even with the healing piece, I thank God that I was able to even heal deeper. Had him and I not been married, I think I would still probably be where I was. But because him and I were married, there were still some more layers, because even to this moment, I had never told anyone. I had never had counseling. I thought, God healed me. I feel better. Right, I know I'm living differently. Right. I know I've changed. But that deep-rooted healing where God would actually pull up the roots was still there. Now, he did do a measure of healing before I got married. There was some healing that I guess the way God orchestrated that only happened with him and I being together. And it was things like I would get angry that he wouldn't organize things the way I wanted him to do. He wouldn't put his clothes the way I wanted him to do. Right. He would leave. He loves to watch TV. I don't like watching TV. He would leave the TV on at night, and I would get very angry, and I couldn't figure out, why am I so angry? But I realized that the anger was not normal. This is beyond just your normal, you're getting on my nerves. And we prayed about it. We went to counseling, and the first question the counselor asked us was, have either of you ever been abused? I thought that was an awesome first question. Yeah. Not, where'd you meet, how long you been married? She said, because it's one thing to be married with no trauma and people to be healed. It's a totally different type of relationship, or it takes a special man to be married to a woman, or vice versa, who has had trauma in their life. Those are the type of things in our little honeymoon phase that we don't think about. Right. We're so in love, but we don't think about the longevity of the marriage. And so I explained to her, yes, I've been abused. And so that was one of the very first sessions that she had with us. She didn't talk about anything else, but she began to talk about that trauma. And so I told her about the TV meeting, and she said, well, tell me about the abuse. And then it clicked. Every time I would begin to be molested, the TV would always be on. That's why I hate TV. Hated TV. Mm-hmm. There would always be some type of pornographic image on the TV, and then the touching would start. And it would always be at night. So when he was leaving the TV on at night, it was a trigger for me. Right, yeah. It was taking me back to that moment, because when I was single, I would sleep with the TV off. No lights. I couldn't even have the little cell phone light on. I sleep in the total dark. Mm-hmm. And so when he would leave the TV on, it was a trigger that I didn't know was there. Yeah. And so I was responding because it was taking me back, and she simply looked at me and said, look at him. You're safe now. And I just wept. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Because it wasn't until she said that now I realize he's not him. That trigger doesn't have to have the impact, and you're okay. You're safe now. Yeah, yeah. And then with all the organizing, there being OCD. A lot of people say they're obsessive compulsive and cleaning. Well, what she explained to me is when you're being traumatized, when you have trauma, the only thing that I could ever control was my environment. Right. So I would, when my brother would touch me, I would do things like this. So I would be in my room, and if I had something, see that? Yeah. I would put my keys or something that would make noise by the door. So if he was to open the door, the keys would drop. Now I begin to prepare myself. Right. So as a result of that, I become an adult who still is doing subconsciously organizing and being overly compulsive and getting upset that he's moving my things. But if I move it, it's okay. If he moves it, I get upset. Right. And then she explained to him the only thing that she could ever control was her environment, her personal space. Yeah. And then she looked at me and she was like, get over it. you're okay now. You're safe. And so when he was moving my things, it was not that he was moving my things, but he was messing with my safety net.
Right.
And so I had to begin to understand that, I'm safe now. I don't have to move things and orchestrate things to feel safe anymore because now I'm safe.
Yeah.
And so that next level of healing had to take place. And
interesting thing on that, so much of the burden had to be lifted from you just for you to have the kind of relationship with God and to start moving. But that it's like cutting a tree off almost, isn't it? There's still the stump and there's still the roots.
Exactly.
And those have to go for you to really get deep, for the ground to be cleared.
Oh, yeah.
Those things, that's a beautiful image that you have there. I know it's out of a horrible part of your life, but you were healed to a certain point.
Exactly.
Before you reached that total, but you had to be healed to that place to even move farther.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, the forest was cleared, but still there's all of those stumps, the roots there that keeps the field from being so that it can be fertile and whatnot. That's a beautiful imagery. I've never heard it expressed quite like that. But it's I understand.
That's a good picture too. Just cutting off the tree, and you're like, we can see much better now.
Yeah.
But then you still have that stump.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm going to use that. Use that one. Yeah. So even. Recently I've gone to get those roots out because I was still noticing residue, I call it residual behaviors, just kind of, especially when I get upset, just acting out of character and ungodly and, just that residue that was there. And I went through, I found a healing program that God was instructing us for our church to really, the first year, to focus on prayer, healing and deliverance ministry, and the children. He said, that's all I want you to focus on.
Yeah.
Prayer, healing and deliverance, children.
The foundation.
He said, that's
Setting
all.
the foundation.
He said, don't worry about anything else.
Yeah.
Don't worry about musicians. Don't worry about... And as he began to take us through, even us personally, in our personal relationship, through a next level of healing, I found a program called Restoring the Foundations. And it's the program that's going to assist our healing and deliverance ministry, but it's an in-depth healing and deliverance ministry. And that is like my baby now. It is my passion using that because I have been involved in healing and deliverance, and I had, lessons here and lessons there, but this curriculum encompasses everything. And they go all the way back to you being in your mother's womb. So, the enemy begins to develop a plan and sow seeds, and even comes through the bloodline generationally.
The generational curses we've seen it up close and personal.
And so this program goes all the way back to you being in your mother's womb and then takes you to your current. And I went away for a few days, and when I came back, even when I was there, it was such a smooth process the way they do it. I was like, did this work? So a few weeks in, I started doing my follow-up, and I had to ask, I said, did it work? He was like, I just got really big, like,
if anybody
something worked.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure if I'm ready for his answer, but I'm like, hey, do you think it worked? And then, he was like, absolutely. So now we're using that curriculum for our church.
Yeah.
And we're training. We just recently had a Hope, Healing, and Freedom seminar to kick off and explain to people what that program is going to look like, what it's all about. And people there got to experience a small taste of the ministry, and it was awesome. And so now Pastor Pauline Ezell, she'll be coming back to finish the training, and we'll have, and not just members of our church, but anybody locally who has a passion for healing. God is calling us to raise up healing ministers, so people who can minister this level of healing. And that's just a portion of the healing. I know you were talking about the young lady earlier about the abortions. In the process of all of that promiscuity, I've had at least 8 abortions through that process, because my first time getting pregnant was 16. My mom found out on a Monday. I was getting an abortion on that Thursday.
Goodness.
And so, because that's what I was taught.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
You get pregnant, you have an abortion. I didn't know.
We've heard that time and time again.
I didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
And so after that, every time I got pregnant, I would head to the clinic. Not to mention, I would say in my head, if this child in my womb would ever have to go through what I went through, I would rather suffer whatever consequences God has for me.
Take it on yourself.
Yeah, again, here I go taking on something. Than to bring a child into this world and have to suffer what I did. And so that was one of the things that also catapulted me into to really seeking God and wanting a family, because before him, I didn't want to get married or have children. I said, God, if there's a way for me to have a child, and is there anything I can do to help alleviate this type of pain? And God said, live for me. And he told me it takes one person, Chaka, to break a generational curse.
Yeah. I preach that. It's real, but one person can change it.
And I said,
can snap the line.
If that's true, God, and you would bless me with kids, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I started for God, and I began to have this walk for God that even my family to this day, they think I'm nuts. But I wasn't looking back.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't looking back. I'm going forward because it's not about me, but it's about my legacy.
Right.
And a promise that God gave me. And I said, whatever I have to do, come hell or high water, me alone by myself and whoever wants to come, I'll do it, God.
Amen. That's strong, child. Strong stuff. But you met a guy.
Yeah, she met a guy. She met a guy.
I met a guy. This awesome man of God.
Where did you all meet at?
At my church. So I was serving
in Maryland.
Okay.
He had a friend. His friend and I worked together there at the church, and his friend was a preacher, and he was a preacher. He was coming to see his friend preach, and he said, Chaka, my friend here is accepting applications for First Lady. And in the South they call the pastor's wife First Lady. And I said, what? At that time, I'm serving in ministry in my church. I see what the pastor has to go through. I see all the behind the scenes, the protocol and nuances of the church. And I'm thinking, oh. And so I told this friend, well, I'm not sure anybody who's that silly. But I'll let you know if I find anyone to fill out the application. But anyone who fills out the application, you better question it. And they just start laughing at me. And I walked away like, no. And I had a list of occupations that I didn't want to marry. I said, God, I don't want to marry a pilot. Anybody's going to be. I had a list, my list of what I wanted. Had a list of occupations. Preacher wasn't even on my radar. Pastor wasn't even on my radar. In a million years, when people look at us and they hear his testimony of how, he was raised in the church, and then they people who know me, they're like, how'd you marry a pastor? I said, only God.
This has to be a God thing. This has to be a God thing.
Absolutely.
So, that's how we met, and we courted and long distance. And, and God blessed us to be married, 2 years later?
2 years later. Yeah. We've been going strong 8 years.
8 years.
Well, that's, I wanted to do a sermon, on Priscilla and Aquila.
Mm-hmm.
They were never mentioned except together.
That's
in the
right.
Bible.
That's right.
And it's like you all, Chaka and Ricardo.
Yeah.
It's one word. It's one word.
I like that. Yes, sir.
And it's special, isn't it? Shelby and I share a relationship like that. She took a chance on a heathen. and I don't know. Still, the jury is still out for her. But it is to see it lights me up. It just lights my heart to hear how that came about. But Ricardo, you were it sounds like didn't have quite the life that Chaka did, right?
Well, it was literally total opposites. So my story, she talked about how she was raised in this, the Prince George County, sort of the Hollywood of that area. I, on the other hand, was from very humble beginnings, right? So I was born in Haiti, country in Haiti, and was only there for about maybe a year and a half before my mother brought us to New Jersey. We moved to New Jersey, and we were impoverished to no ends. Like, we didn't realize how poor we were until later on in the as I grew up and I realized, we didn't have any of this. But we stayed in a sort of a one bedroom apartment. My mother, my grandmother, my brother, myself. We had one bed. My mother had a bed in her room. My brother and I had the bed in the same room. My grandmother, we had to kind of make a room. We put some curtains up, kind of made a divider. My grandmother had her, a little privacy back there. So we were all kind of stuffed in this apartment. And there was everything from, I think we had so many indoor neighbors. Whether it was roaches, whether it was rodents, I mean, just a whole bunch of everything.
Right.
They shared, they felt they were more at home than we were. Yeah. And so it was just a very impoverished condition. But we were so, very religious family. They loved the Lord and they really believed in, just worshiping God and serving God. And so every day we would, read our Bibles. Every night my mother would do devotions with my brother and I. Didn't have a father in the home. So we were raised without a father, and we just didn't know. We were happy. I was happy. The only thing that really bothered me in particular was, they were very sheltering. They were very overprotective in our home. So I had no exposure of what the outside world looked like, and as a result, I really enjoyed going to school. I really enjoyed going to church. We had a church next door, across the street from the apartment we lived in, and this is New Jersey. This was a rough part of New Jersey, East Orange, and we walked everywhere. We didn't have a vehicle. Single mothers trying to do her best to get us a great foundation. But what I appreciate so much about my mother was that she believed that she would be the difference maker in terms of setting up an experience for me to encounter God.
Oh goodness.
That's I believe her mission and her life's purpose was to really set up an encounter. Yeah. To make sure that her children experience God, if nothing else. And so we did that. We went to church. Literally, I was one of those who was in church every day. Every single day, Monday through Sunday. I was in church every day, and I loved it. I was not one of those who said, because they were in church all the time, that they began to have this disdain for the church. And I was one of those who loved it. And I enjoyed every aspect. I enjoyed the preaching the most. So here I am, 5-6-year-old kid, enjoying preaching. Everybody else, all the other kids would be in the fellowship hall during the preaching. I'm sitting there fascinated, just enjoying the preaching. And, so the Lord really dealt with me at a young age, and what was amazing was I was able to actually process what the preacher was saying. I could really comprehend. So I believe God has really graced me with the gift to just really comprehend and understand Him in a way that was probably unusual for most. But then my story, continued to shift as I got older. Noticing that I didn't have a father around more and more, particularly at school. Father and Son days and, Father and Children days. And I remember sharing at our healing seminar. I remember there being a specific moment where I asked God, I said, well, why am I the only one without a father? And it really bothered me. My mother's struggling as much as she is. My grandmother's trying her best. She's in her 70s. And it was just a bad situation. For Christmas, every birthday, the gift would be the same. It would be underwears and socks because we just didn't have.
Right.
And my aunt who worked for Avon would, give us some deodorant. So literally every Christmas we kind of knew what we were getting: underwear, socks, deodorant. And every now and then we would get a bottle of cologne if my aunt could afford it. But so that was sort of my childhood. Again, we just were very simple. Didn't know much. We lived in the hood. I remember going to school, walking to school every day. My brother and I, we would walk to school, and there would be moments where, in that part of the neighborhood, we went to a private school. My mother worked this job that allowed her to she worked about 3 jobs and allowed her to somehow send us to private school because she did not want us to get entangled in the public school system because of the violence.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
And so we would get off school, and the public school would get out maybe 30 minutes afterwards. Well, because we're walking home, the kids from the public school would actually catch up to where we were. And I remember several times fearing for our lives because there was one time in particular there was about 25 guys, 25 teenagers. They're in high school, we're in elementary school. and they're approaching us, and they surround us. And every time that happened, God would send. One time, he sent my professor, sent one of our teachers, who got in his car, showed up, took his bat out of his trunk, and he told us to get in the car and told the guys, I don't know what he said to the guys, but they backed off. But it was constant experiences like that, running for your life, hearing gunshots every night, hearing ambulances every night. It was that type of neighborhood.
Right.
But my safe haven was the house of God.
Mm-hmm.
I learned manhood in the house of God because the men gathered together, knowing we didn't have a father, and they were there to make sure that we were taken care of.
Oh, that's tremendous.
So it was a great community. Until this day, I wrote a book that entitled "The Church Pushed Me Over the Edge." But till this day, the church to me is the greatest institution. It's the greatest, because what God will do through the body of Christ is, short to, it's second to none in terms of shifting somebody's life.
Truly.
And so that was a major blessing for me. But I was able to excel in school. I was always a great student. Accelerated, skipped a couple of grades, and then 8th grade hit. Well, 8th grade, I'm 13 years old, getting ready to turn 14, and the lady who brought me into the country, who birthed me, was my financial security. She was my social, in terms of just social development. She was just my security for social development. She was everything. My mother, she ends up dying. She passes away. She had a brain aneurysm. She was in church. And they said her last words, they were having, actually it was a house meeting, prayer meeting they were having, and her last words were Jesus. They said she shouted Jesus and fell out.